Am I on? No. Now am I on? No. All right. They're going to kick me out shortly. I'm going to field it. All right. Oh, now you can hear me. Can you hear me now? All right, good. Oh, gosh. Welcome. It's so good to see people, right? Yes. Just to be able to interact. I've even seen some hugs. Isn't that nice? It's been a hard year, right? More than a year. It's been hard. Yes. So let's open with a prayer. Lord, we come to you tonight, weary and tired. But Lord, because we know that you are here, you are beside us, you are in our hearts, we know that you have your grace. We know that we have the joy that you give us, that your love is settling right here in this room. That Christ is here, that the light of Christ is here. It's settling on our hearts and our minds. It's bringing us peace and grace. And we ask you, Lord, that in the proceedings tonight, in the discussion tonight, that you will be with us, that you will guide us, that you will bring wisdom to our thoughts and our words. And we ask for this with all praise and glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. All right. We're here after your leaders have been working on the last 2 years, trying to decide about some things. And we'll see. Oh, there she is. Didn't even have to say slide. I was supposed to say slide. There it is. I just thought it. So 2019, 20, there was a group of people that came together. Justin Smith, Elizabeth Wilson Smith, Roy Creasy, Bill Chocolate, Wanda Martin, Gary Foster, and me, and Jeff, to begin to look at some of the costs associated with maintaining this building. What's going on in the infrastructure of this building? And how much is it going to cost? What needs to be done in the next 5 years? What needs to be done in the next 10 years? And how are we going to manage that? So, next slide. So then in this past January, we, after kind of gathering all that information together, a second task force consisting of Bill Chocolate and Gary Foster, Janice Gregory, Gloria Hall, Wanda Martin, and myself began to meet regularly to look at what that first task force had found in their studies, bringing in people to look at the infrastructure of this church, looking at what's behind the walls, what's hidden in the ceiling, and trying to figure out what we need to do with this church. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
One of the things, is that live? I told Keith I needed coffee. One of the things I asked, I pull these vision meetings every January. I'm going into last 2019 before, or 2020 before I even had this one. I sent emails out to people and I asked them, I said, so what are the 3 non-negotiables here at Huntington Court? Some of them responded, some of them didn't. The 3 non-negotiables were worship, and these are the words, worship, study, mission. Non-negotiables, worship, study, and mission. So when we looked at what things we value as a congregation, the things we value the most are those 3 things: worship, study, and mission. We say our mission statement here is what? to create communities in Christ. And we talk about that takes place here as well as when we go outside our walls. One of the things which I would say is non-negotiable, we also said, and this is from the task force that was assigned, is that we feel we're called to do ministry here in the Williamson Road area. That was one of those non-negotiable things. And that came from, when Nancy shared with the people, they don't all live in the Williamson Road area, but this church has had a presence in the Williamson Road area. We're doing ministry. So we talk about, again, worship. We've seen during that can be done pretty much anywhere. We've done that in a Zoom environment. Well, not Zoom environment. We've done it in a YouTube and a Facebook environment for almost a year and a quarter. Study we've done in a Zoom environment for most part, but the mission, no. Mission, we said, is here. So our context is the Williamson Road area. So if you ask me, if we could dream dreams as a church, what would creating a community in Christ look like for me as a pastor? I told people when we came out of the 2000 and I guess it was the 18-19 meeting, when we started, our Homework and Beyond program. And I kept thinking about the beyond parts, not just doing mentoring with children. I thought about what would it be like, because we do some of these things throughout the year. What would it be like if we, clothed these children? What if we fed these children? What if we started building relationships with their parents, teaching them parenting skills? What if we taught them, financial management skills? All the things we could do about starting with this group of, we've got 8 kids now, moving to 16. What could we do to make a difference in this community? Because that's what we heard, when we talked to back, a couple of years ago. Again, this is like the 3rd task force. That task force went to civic leaders. It went to the police department. It went to the teachers, the librarians, even, and because I think you were on that one, Mary Alice. And the thing it kept coming back to was children. Yeah, that was the thing. We knew we could work with children. We couldn't do some of the things, like one of us wanted to do, a Hispanic ministry. Well, we're not a Hispanic church, and there was a need for Hispanic ministry. Well, we can't do all the needs, but we said, what could we wrap our head around? And that was one we could. So that's what gave birth to that program. So if you'd asked me, and this is just me, a vision as a pastor was, how could we take such things like mission, creating a community in Christ, growing an understanding of Jesus here, and then being Jesus through a program such as that. That's just one aspect of it. So how do we do that? So this whole in between that I didn't talk about is system and strategies. How do we get there? And I'm going to be asking that, whether the finance committees or worship or whatever, moving forward, trustees, running everything through the staff parish. Do we have the right staffing to do this? Do we have the right facility to do the things that we say that are important here? So just a quick reminder, though, when we started with the people that Nancy just mentioned, this last task force, one of the things that we reminded ourselves of is we have not always been in this building. Most of us here in this room have been in this building, but not all of us have. The church began down the road in the garage, near Williamson Liberty, and then in 1928, the little white church was built. And I kid about that because who remembers that one? Because when I was visiting the first couple of years, I was blamed for tearing down the little white church. You guys know I was not here then. So I give that public disclaimer, but it was funny that it's amazing things that get thrown at the pastor's feet. So but in 1948, this sanctuary was built. 1949, the educational building was built. And many of you have been here through that whole task. You've been here. This has been your worship space. You've had your baptisms here, marriages here. You've watched your kids grow up here. So we're sensitive to that fact as we were moving forward. So what we started doing, and I'm going to let you pop a slide. We started looking at some of the things, and these were just the key items. This came out of that first task force, the one that came from 19 into 20. Or the 2019 one that Nancy mentioned originally, to pull costs together, to just get us back to normal. And a couple of things we saw, you could pretty much push out a lot of the windows in the educational wing right now because they need to be glazed. So we checked, these are costs from contractors that gave us cost on that. It's $15,000 to get that done. These are things that need to be done in the next 5 years. painting the interior of the fellowship hall, painting the exterior of the fellowship hall. We talk about replacing 2 doors to the fellowship hall. Everybody says, Jeff, those doors need to be fixed. Yes, we know they need to be fixed. And as this is done last year's number, since that time, I would even say we could even, you're going to hear that 5 to 10 on these doors. They're going to be moving closer because this is now a 1.5 year dated information. We looked at the education building. This is what raised the conversation. This is what made us start looking at the cost, because every Sunday someone complains, does Mr. Orange not clean the toilet or things like that? Jeff, did you know that the water is brown? Jeff, did you know the water in the toilet is brown? Yes. And trust me, since we've been closed since the pandemic, it's worse. If you've been in the bathrooms, you'll know what I'm talking about. But the problem we've got is the pipes in the education building are in the walls. So unlike the pipe work we had downstairs, they were exposed pipes. The pipes in the education building are in the walls, which we were looking at how would we get around this, which would mean taking the pipes, putting them on the outside of the walls. And the contractor said to do such a task, because you're talking, not just piping issues, you're talking about to dress it up so people don't get burned on pipes, things like $35,000 to $50,000 just for that. I put a note here because since that time, I know you guys have been gone. One thing we'd never even factored in, we thought we had fixed every pipe in this building, only to find out we had pipes we didn't know. And they were buried in concrete between these 2 floors. So that's why I know people say, when's the social hall going to be back? Well, it's almost done, but we put a drop ceiling in so we get to the concrete. I say that because when Valley Boiler came over, they said, Jeff, if anybody has questions about the pipe, if anybody wants to see the pipes, you can look in here. You can see the little pittings. It's not going to be if the next pipes downstairs will break. It's when will the next pipes break. And if the sad part for us is we just almost had the downstairs finished, and then I get a call Tuesday. Jeff, did you know there's a leak in the social hall? Hopefully it's not one of these pipes. Hopefully it's just an air-conditioned pipe, but we've already got damage in the work that's been done. I say that because the costs we factored in have nothing to do with this, but just to do the repair on that one section of pipe and the piping, the work around it was $3,500. And that's all copper piping down the floor length of this building. So that's what we see facing us in the next 1 to 5 years. If you'll go to the next one. Again, 1 to 5 years is on the sanctuary would be the replacement of pipe. In the dark, we look good. It's just if you're trying to be aesthetic for people coming in, it's the same thing which we talked about. Even from those that are coming in, we were just talking about piping. We haven't even talked about the damage that the copper has done to the bathrooms that make them look aged as it is. We talked about the need to, if you've been out in the parking lot, to seal the parking lot. And like I said, just the total of those items alone was $91,000. So it was $91,000, not counting the piping that I just told you downstairs. That we haven't, no pun intended, haven't really touched yet. So that was our 1 to 5. We looked at the 5 to 10 years. If we said we're going to look, we just need to know what cost we had lying ahead of us. So that's the next slide. We know that the flooring in the fellowship hall, people say, Jeff, it looks dirty all the time. It's old floor. And it's used a lot because it's easy to heat and cool that building. But it's in an asbestos floor, so replacing the floor and abatement. As I say that, I want to pause for a second. The one thing that we also have to factor in, because that $3,400, you're thinking, why did it cost $3,400 to do that pipe? We have asbestos between the 2 floors. The pipes for these are wrapped in asbestos, which means we would also, if we just wanted to go do the replacement of the pipes, we have to consider abatement costs as well. So that I just want to touch on so you'll know. So we looked at things, the fellowship hall, because things were not done in the 08 update, would be like replacing heating and air conditioning we see in the next 5 to 10 years, the water heater, the tile in the social hall, the education, it says repairing the doors in the education building. Like I said, this was 1.5 years ago. I think we would all agree that the doors also on the sanctuary, if you just walk around the outside right now as well, because So that was $31,000. Again, these were numbers that were prepared to give to the leadership earlier. So they have now started to see some dating on it. Some additional information that you need to be aware of. We know if we started doing major renovations in the fellowship hall, we may have to make the bathrooms accessible. The windows and roof, there's the good. We don't have to worry about that. The carpet in the education building, we don't have to worry about that for the most part. It may be stained, but it's good. The roof replacement, that was one thing that scared the bejeebies out of me, is this a slate roof? And I think because I knew at my first real church, we had a slate roof, and we had to start getting replacements on that. So I started thinking, oh my, we got a slate roof in this building 75 years. The good news is that a slate roof I found since then is 100 to 125 years, so that won't affect any of us in this room. Yep. No, I'm sure. Yeah, none of us in this room. I don't think I have to worry about that either. The ticking time bomb, what we're aware of, which we get to fix every so often, is we use most churches worry about boilers. We fixed that boiler. We replaced it a couple years ago, so we don't have to worry about that. That's why you don't have that listed on here. Our big one we have is the air conditioner out back. The air conditioner out back. When I first got here, and I just finished 11 years, I remember the people in Valley Boiler said, I don't know how many years you got left out on this one. And that was 11 years ago. So it's not a if, it's just a when. We just don't know. We don't know when. He comes to fix every year. We get another year out of it. Hopefully that'll keep going. But I just tell them, so we need to let you know. We were just trying to let people know. We looked at, that eventually we'd have to replace window units. We had to replace one in a Sunday school class. We've had one that fell out. We had one stolen. So we don't have to worry about, just aging out. They just either stole or get stolen or fall out. But they will eventually have to be repaired. One of the things that we talked about at the leaders meeting, we do have maintenance contracts. We try to keep the boilers so we don't get hit with unexpected boiler costs. We try to keep the elevators so we don't get hit with unexpected elevator costs. So there are maintenance contracts on both of them. The maintenance contracts, though, do not cover the actual repair work. You'll get discounts on the repair work, but that does not cover the repair work. Does that make sense? So they're constantly coming in here to check, because they figured if we constantly are checking the elevators, we're constantly maintaining the elevators, constantly maintaining. It's like taking your car when you get your car oil changed. You do it so your car doesn't have bad damage. That's the same reason we have the maintenance contracts for the elevator as well as the boiler system. They're constantly coming in here once a month on the boiler system and air conditioning to keep extending light. They're doing it the same on the elevator. So we're paying on those. We pay $2,800 for our elevator. We pay $3,300 on maintenance expenses. But still, like you said, when you get a pipe, breaks, $3,400. Good news is we get 10% off because we have a maintenance contract. So that would have been what, $3,700. The other things, just to let you know, we're good on the fence outside. So that was the thing. We just wanted people to also know where we started watching expenses for repair work. Our repair work, 2015 wasn't a bad year. That's when it started happening. We were doing anywhere between $13,000 to $18,000 a year of just fixing pipes. Not going and fixing, like replacing any of the pipes, just fixing pipes and things like that. You're thinking, well, why was 2020 so low? Anybody want to guess? You weren't here. You weren't here, and I will be honest, and I told Gary, because, the heater stopped working right before Easter, and I really didn't care. I'm thinking I'll just go override it. Every Sunday when Kiana and I, and the rest of them came in, I just go down and override it. But I knew then we got to this year we had to get it fixed. So they've got it fixed for now. But that's why it was so low last year. Usually we run 13 to 18,000. I know right now by the time I fix whatever my next leak is, we'll probably be on pace for that again this year. But we just want you to know that. The other things of which people need to be aware, because people say, well, you've got the parsonage funds. And we have used the parsonage funds. We've used that for like paving the parking lot. Luckily, we didn't get stuck with the whole bill because the person never came back. So we only paid $2,500. That's how it works. The The social hall pipes downstairs, we replaced those pipes because we just said, heck, those are exposed pipes. And they were small pipes. So we figured if we're going to have to do it, let's just go ahead and replace them all out. If you be proactive, you can use parsonage funds. We knew, according to Valley Boiler, that these registers, they started dying one at a time. So we just said, we'll be proactive, we'll fix the registers. So it was $9,000 a couple years ago. We put in cameras, because it's a wacky world out there as you read where people kill each other. We did some work in the boiler room, and we've done some sound equipment. The parsonage funds we can use, but the thing that you have to be aware of the parsonage fund, and that's what I usually remind trustees in finance, you have to be proactive. You have to be proactive with parsonage funds. Parsonage funds cannot be used for maintenance. So let's pick on it. You've got a little over 100,000 in parsonage funds, right? 100, 140. 80-some thousand in parsonage funds. So you've got 80-some thousand left in parsonage funds. I told you air conditioner's 90,000. You think, well, that's great. Air conditioner breaks. We'll just use some parsonage funds. You can't. Because parsonage funds, you have to be proactive. So what you would have to do is say, okay, I'm going to use the 82,000 and replace the air conditioners. That makes sense? It has to be a proactive expense. It has to be a capital improvement. That's not Jeff. That's the Methodist discipline that we fall under. It has to be on a capital improvement only. It can't be used for maintenance. So any of those work items we talked about, it would have to be on those type of things. Improving, not fixing. So for example, again, a pipe breaks downstairs. Again, it's $3,400. Where does it come from? It's not going to come from there. Just to let you know, which is not in these costs, to fix downstairs the ceiling, because we decided, since we knew that they're going to have to go back into that ceiling, most likely again. So we spent $3,000 more, but luckily the insurance company covered a lot of it, except for $3,400 was $13,000 just on the ceiling downstairs, and then you had $3,400 on the pipes. So we just want you to know what that works. If you'll go to my next slide. So the question we started asking ourselves, and what made me bring it to the leaders 2 years ago, is this good stewardship of funds? Or my fear is because I've watched so many churches maintain a building that their mission became the building. Example, Green Memorial. I don't know if you remember, Green Memorial is a beautiful church. They had mold. To fix that was over $1 million. Over $1 million, and guess what happened at the end of the day? They still had an old building. And the sad part is many of the people left because they spent $1 million that they were using in the past to do mission work. So they have now a well-maintained building, but they don't have funds to do mission work. And so half of their congregation left. And so they were down to about 40 now on a Sunday as well. I mean, we're not the only one with the same problem. It's just the only difference is we're one of the few that are talking about it. Calvary. People asked me, I remember when we started this, going into last year's meeting, I had like 3 or 4 people brought me their newspaper. Jeff, did you see what happened to Calvary? Yeah, I did. And that's what I don't want this to be us. I know my leaders have heard me say this. Back in 1998, 98, 99, I was a part-time local pastor downtown Roanoke. And I remember having a conversation like this. My leaders at my church were open. My district superintendent was open. I said, we need to start thinking outside the box. I said, my fear is, you're going to see some downtown churches, if they're not proactive, they're going to close. And I said, because they're not going to have the resources to maintain their buildings or to maintain their ministers, or they're not going to be able to maintain staff. And Tom Joyce, like I said, was the district superintendent at the time. He said, Jeff, pull them together. Have a talk with them. So we began the conversation. And like most churches, they walked away. Highland Park said, we'll be fine. Belmont said, we'll be fine. Melrose, Dick Jones, sorry, I know we're on tape. He said, I can fix this, turn it around. Green Memorial, they didn't even show up because they said, we don't have a problem. And I looked at that group and I said, they're just 10 years behind us. They will hit this. Now, I was wrong. It was 20 years behind us, but they still. And I felt like a voice, and I left that day so disappointed because thinking nobody listened to me. Because I watched Highland close. I watched Melrose close. I watched Belmont tried to move in an unsuccessful move out to Hardy Road. So I watched 4 of those churches close at the end of the day. So I told my leaders that. I said, because I'm not always going to be the pastor here. And at the end of the day, I told them, I said, it's got to be your choice. I will rest with whatever choice you guys make. I said, but I think, would you agree with that? I said, it's got to be your choice. So the question which bothered me, is this good stewardship of funds? And that's the same thing I would have been saying if I was Green Memorial. If you're going to tell me you're going to put $1 million into fixing mold and a building that they had just done renovations on like 5 to 7 years before. So they had just done renovations, then poured another $1 million into it. And now, honestly, they're having the same discussions we are. Do we have people come in and rent space? Do we move? Do we combine? They went from a full-time pastor, if you were just sitting here 5 years ago, Green Memorial would be one of the positions that most of us as pastors wanted because they were one of the highest paid pastor-appointed positions. Now they have a part-time pastor. So they've gone to a part-time pastor that serves Green Memorial as well as Trinity. And she says, Jeff, I don't know what to do. She said she's got the same problems we're having the discussions on right now. So the question is this good stewardship of funds to maintain this beautiful facility? And it is a beautiful facility. As I'm standing here looking at this stained glass. So we talked about that. Is it a good stewardship of our resources? Is this church, the mission, going to be the church, the building per se? The building per se. The other thing that we realized, and I think that was more concern like Gary and I've had, is I've been here 11 years. Guess what? I'm 11 years older. But so are you. And so getting volunteers is hard. I mean, for work jobs, some of you guys used to come out and do those work duties, and it's getting harder. Paul, you'd attest it's harder to do it outside. And I know, Gary, we have, maybe 3 to 5, and that's counting me on a good day. And I know Robbie's there with us often. It's not many of us there. And I think we never had a lot. We used to have like 10 to 12, and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. So some of the things we used to do to keep up outside is getting more difficult. So what takes, I don't mean to sound bad, guys. Let's take this another 5 to 10 years down the road. And then you throw a pandemic on top of it, and we don't even know who our congregation is right now. But that's the thing most of us as United Methodist churches are struggling with right now, good or bad. So at the end of the day, we came up with 5 options. This is the things that we talked about, so you'll know. These were the 5 things. 1 is just do what most churches do, which is the easiest, is stay and do nothing. Just fix as we go. And I will be honest, I was meeting with my friend George today. For me as a pastor, that's the easiest. But you guys have been good to me, and I know I'm going to get pot shots for this. I know that. That's the easiest one to take. But I know that if I had left, and that's why I told staff Harris I was willing to stay to get us to this point to make the decisions, because I said, you put a new pastor in, they're not going to touch it. And if they did, what's going to happen? Because you're not going to trust them, you're going to say what? Bye. You're going to move them. I know from the changes I put in, I catch hell. And so imagine someone coming in the first year, we need to talk about the building. Imagine how that one would go. So we were honest. We said we could stay and do nothing, fix as we do, and that it was an option. The other one, we talked about fundraising campaigns. We talked about doing like a 3-year fundraising campaign, a capital improvement campaign, borrowing a loan, taking a loan, and doing a fundraising campaign along with it. The one thing that we were just honest with each other on is, and I don't mean to pick on us, but it's true. Every time that we do something on giving to one thing here at this church, they don't give in the other. And I know, and Sue's heard me, and I love the ladies group, but she's seen it too. We have a teacup auction, giving at church drops. Because they say, I'm allotted myself to give, for example, $3,000 as the church, $3,000 a month, whatever it is. And that's just me picking a figure. Because the teacup auction usually runs between, $1,500 to $2,000? $1,200 to $1,500. And I don't usually see a $1,200 to $1,500 drop in giving on that Sunday. I did the first couple of years. But I think I've heard it enough now, so it's not as bad now. But yeah, we usually drop about $800 to $1,000 on that Sunday. So our fear was, again, would we give to both? Would we do that? So that was the concern. We talked about merging. When we had the January meeting, that's what meant the task force. Would we think about merging? But one of the things with mergers is most mergers in churches, if you don't have the district behind it, it's not pretty. And we looked at the numbers of loss. It usually is because both churches lose identities. Our fear was losing our identity and losing members. The other thing we thought about was doing like a cooperative parish, working with some of the people here, or even, when the denomination splits, whenever that happens, which didn't happen last year, doing some of us in the same space. And even like Julie and I had the discussion recently, even if our denomination wasn't willing to do that, would the churches in Williams Road area be willing to do that? And here's the funny story I have to tell you guys, is they all know that they've got the same problems we do. And I remember coming out of Williams Road ministerial meeting back in March, and they said, we think this is great. You're discussing this with your church, Jeff. We want to see how it works out. So I said, you just threw me under the bus, which is true. But since that time, I have found because of COVID, many of the pastors are afraid of their job. Because, I said, hey, would you be willing to even have these discussions with us? And this is after I'd already met with the leaders. I just felt them out. My task force didn't say it. I just did it. Because I knew that she was going to ask me the question, have you talked to the ministers in the Williams Road area? And they weren't willing. It's not good, bad. It's just what it was. We talked about renting, selling the building and going renting somewhere, which was a doable option. We talked about selling the building and rebuilding somewhere. We also talked about using funds we've got. We talked about using up all the parsonage funds. We could cover most of those 1 to 5 year expenses. We talked about we could even have a call charge conference, use some of the Cooley scholarship, not more than once. But the fear of that is there's that really good stewardship of funds, and then when people wanted to give designated gifts down the road, would they trust us? Would they trust us with their funds? I gave you money for this to buy something, and you did this, or you told me, Jeff, you were going to put in, for example, I'll pick on this one, sound equipment, or you told me downstairs you were going to put in air conditioning, but yet you used it for carpeting. We realized our street credibility would be bad. So we talked about all 5 of these, and every time we'd get to them, they know I would stop, I'd send them back, and they told me I have to pray on it. So we did, and they prayed over it. And what would happen is we came back, and we were pretty much right in the middle. I had them rate their top 3, and I said, oh, it's fine. I said, I can't come give them all those options. I said, go back and think about it and pray about it. And I let them vote, and I did not want them. I didn't want them to be peer pressured into each other. So I said, and I didn't vote. And I didn't want to peer pressure them. And you all 5 voted the same thing. They all voted the same thing, which is our next one. So we looked at, well, not next, we'll stop here for a second. Like I said, we looked at how would it affect our stewardship. Whatever we do affects not just our maintaining this building, but how does it affect, where would we lose? Would we be making decisions over staffing or building or staffing or, what? Missions or building? We looked at stewardship. We looked at loss and growth of members. Each of those options, no matter what option we had, is not perfect. So we think which one do we lose the least people of as well? So we talked about it. So at the end of the day, we came up with this one, which was the parallel tracks. And the parallel tracks were this. We would look at selling the facility. Like I said, we came back to saying, well, this has not always been the facility. And as we remind ourselves during a pandemic, a church is not a building, it's people. So we would sell, but we would sell it, with the idea of it being, because my biggest fear is what I told them if we chose this route. If you put a sale sign on that, to me as a pastor, to the world, that looks like, hey, we're going out of business. And that scared me just as bad too. So we would put something along the lines, relocating. So it'd be sell, relocating. We would stay in the facility till it's sold. which I have no idea if you're going to ask me how long. So they said it could sell as once we made that decision, it could sell as early as 8 months. It could sell in a year and a half. It could not sell at all. The problem I can tell you, because we've been talking with like Mike Waldvogel, and he says he's got 6 churches that have approached him right now on the same issue that we've got. And you've seen in the last, since we started our discussions in January, if you remember Crossroads, it was now listed as well down here. You know, the one that used to be, what did they used to call it? Thank you, Airly before Falwell bought it. So that one is in our neck of the woods. It's just been listed. So we would stay in this facility during that time until it was sold. At the same time, we stay parallel tracks because Mike Waldvogel would be looking for space for us to rent. You know, rent while we were then building. So basically they would run, I apologize it's doing this. We'd be running, hold on. I just lost it, didn't I? We'd be running 3 tracks. We'd be, at the time that they're looking to sell this building, they'd be constantly looking for space to rent. So that way we're not in panic mode when that time would come. At the same time, they would also be keeping our eye on the Williams Road area. Where could we build? Because that was the same thing. Could we build in the Williamson Road area? And the thought was yes, that we could do that. So I say that because I then invited the 21 leaders that were the visioning meeting back here the 1st of June. Because I wanted to see, before we even continue to move forward, how did they feel? So they were asked the 2 questions. The 2 questions they were asked, because, you know, they heard what I just gave you, the dog and pony show. They heard where we went through it. They heard the 5 options we went through before. And we came with these 2. You know, I agree with the option presented by the task force, which was the parallel track, you know, which was sell, rent, build. You don't rent till it's sold. You start building as soon as you're renting. Or the second was, we do not agree with the option presented by, and we believe that the task force should look at another option. And so I did not want them to do, you know, we've done like roll call votes. I didn't. I wanted it to be unanimous. And like those 5 heard, if it wasn't anywhere close, I was going to stop us. Because I wasn't going to let the congregation split over this. So I let 18 of them that showed up, they voted, anonymously. They voted anonymously, but they also voted unanimously. All 18 of them voted the same thing, to go back with option 1. And they admitted it was a hard decision for them. And I heard them tell their story. So what I'm going to do is pause for a second and let the 5 that were on that task force share first, if you have something to share. If you don't have something to share, don't feel like you got to. And then I'll open it up to those that were in the visioning meeting, if they have something that they want to share. And then I'm going to open up for questions and answers. Is that fair? And I have Kiana taking notes if I forget something. So I'm going to let the 5 of you that were first, feel free. Uh-oh. Well, we'll let you go first because
I'm sneaking up on you from the back. Sorry, I've been back there operating PowerPoint. So I will just say that when we first started this process, that where I started personally, was not where I ended up. I think when I first started, I was really thinking from my heart and not my head. And as I was given more information, and like Jeff said, several of our meetings, he said, okay, you need to go back on your own and think about this and pray about it. And from the beginning of where I started and where I ended up, I had to start thinking with my head instead of my heart. I have a lot of memories in this church. I've been here since '76, which is not nearly as long as some of you, but that's a long time to have been here, and I have lots of memories here. But regardless of where we are, we're still going to be together as a church doing our mission work in the Williamson Road area, and that's what we have to think about.
Thank you. And I think, Wanda, before you leave, I'm going to, one of the things I think that when I'm picking on you for a second, what I heard you is that once you came around, that the idea of something new also
Yes,
excited.
very exciting. You know, I was in Botetourt schools for 38 years, and I had the privilege of going to a brand new school when it was built, and just the excitement of moving into that new building, it revitalized everyone. And I can see that happening with our church too. We need revitalization. We need new growth. And I see moving into a new building, people getting excited about that, and then getting excited about all the mission work and everything that we can be doing in this area as well.
Okay, now. Thank you.
Wanda sneaking up behind me. When I became lay leader in this church, I didn't know what I was getting into. The last couple of years have been the hardest. They've been just hard. And I think I can speak for a lot of the members. We've been grappling with this for, like I said, 2 years now, trying to figure out. And I've cried, and I've grieved, and I'm close to that right now. So, because this church is special. You know, I've been here since 1980, which again, I'm kind of one of the youngsters. But when I really look at what is this church, and the church is a people, and it's a community. And whether we're Huntington Court here, or whether we're Huntington Court someplace else, we will still be the church. We will still be Huntington Court Church. But I understand that there's going to be some grieving. And it's going to hurt. But like Wanda said, then you begin to think of, well, what are the possibilities here? Where's the opportunity for us in this? And I begin to get a little bit excited about that. So.
If any of the other three of you guys want to. Four of them. I can't count. There's 6 of you.
We worked very hard on this since January of last year, year and a half, and none of these decisions were very easy. In fact, they were the hardest decisions I've ever had, one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, and I'm sure that the other members of the committee was the same way. And I changed my thoughts on it several times, but it all came back to you want to save Huntington Court. And we can save Huntington Court by doing this, but we can't save this building because we don't have the manpower to do it. We don't have the funds to do it. But what really convinced me that I was doing the right thing was the night we took our vote, call it what you want to, it was a vote, on what to do with this situation. And when we all agreed, it was 6 of us, and nobody knew how anybody was voting, and all 6 of us voted this way. I knew how hard it was for Gloria to do this because of her connection to this church. And when I found out that she had agreed to do this, I knew I had done the right thing. And if you do, in my opinion, if we do anything else, that this is the only way that we can save Huntington Court. Because if we do these other things, we still got an old building and we can't take care of it.
It's up to the 3 of you. I'm not going to make you do this. Y'all, you good? Okay, good.
You know, I don't have a lot to add to what was being said other than what Nancy said when I decided I was going to do the position of the trustees chairperson. I really didn't understand what the scope of it would be. It was a lot more than realized. But, you know, we worked hard on this. It was very difficult. And, you know, it's not an easy task, but we did it. And, you know, we served, and it was a difficult choice or a difficult vote.
I'll say it one more time, Gloria. I've been here 6 years. I am probably the absolute baby in membership in the church. So talk about not feeling worthy to be on this committee. I too had no idea what I was getting into when I was asked to be the finance chairperson. You know, but we do it with love. You know, most of you know, before I became a member of the church, I was the office manager or church secretary, and I loved that position. But I told Dave and I told Jeff many times that when I was not in that position, I wanted to join this church. And Jeff asked why. I said, because you have the most beautiful people and the most beautiful spirit. I met no one in this church that you just don't immediately fall in love with and know their heart and know their care. And Matt and I are so privileged to be members of this church. And when we as a committee realized how difficult this was going to be for a lot of you, and in particular, it was very difficult for Gloria. And I love Gloria and Dave so much. They have been so wonderful to us. I want you to know that this was, like everybody said, a completely hard and uncomfortable decision to make. But we also stopped and stepped back and said, okay, wait a second, let's not keep pushing on with these discussions and decisions just yet. Let's back up. Let's give Gloria a chance to have her say. Let's give Gloria a chance to wrestle with what's going on here. Let's take our time, because there are going to be a lot more people who are as passionate and have as many years invested in this facility as she does. And so it is very important as a committee that we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be on board and to express their grief, and to hopefully see the vision.
Yeah, one thing, just a quick reminder, we did talk at the beginning, this is just an informational meeting. This is not a voting session, guys. I mean, that doesn't happen until after I did a charge conference. I want us to be on the same page. I don't want to pull anything, you know, feel like that they pulled anything over on you. If any of the other people want to share that we're at the informational meeting, we'll just open it up pieces, because I'm trying to open to people that have heard this now. They've heard it for, sadly, like she said, they probably didn't expect to be meeting with me every week to almost for, yeah. I saw them more than my own family. Hi, fam. But anybody from that were, because you guys now from the leaders, the vision part, I'm going to open up to you guys. If any of you that want to share, and I'm just going to open it for the rest of you just to give your input.
I started here when kindergarten was the stage downstairs. I had to ask Edith Glass, our old secretary, financial secretary from eons ago, where that was. I said, I can just remember this long room I went down. And she said, well, honey, that was on the stage. Well, anyway, I think I really consider myself pretty inflexible, but at this particular time, I'm surprising myself because I want Huntington Court to go on. It's been here 72 years for me. I want it to go on in some form or fashion. This in the next decade is not going to get it. We've got to do things differently. And we have a wonderful chance to do things differently by doing something different with the building and saving money for missions. It's unbelievable to me how much money we're going to be spending. And just think of it, folks. If I can be flexible and be okay with leaving, then you maybe can handle that too. If we build a new building, who's to say we can't take these stained glass windows with us? You're going to have windows in church. Who's to say that we can't take some of our banners? We can't take some of our kneeling cushions. We can't maybe take some of the wood that we've been so accustomed to. We can take this stuff with us, but we're going to be taking it to what we need to be in this community, which has to change. We need to change in order to bring change in and bring new people in. That's one thing I learned at conference this last week. We can't be what we need to be and stay what we are.
And I will tell you guys at this moment, I can't tell what will come and what would go. I would say if I were a person selling the building, I would say I'd hate to see a big hole in the wall there. But yeah, we have had some of those discussions. What things could we take that would still represent us, as well as, some of the old and some of the new. Banners definitely could go anyway with us. But that's not for tonight. Tonight's just to really just letting you know to ask questions as well if you have questions. I'd rather you hear them because, when we do, if we ever get to the point, because that would be the next step. The next step would be is I'd have to have a charge conference, and before we could even do anything else. And I'd rather, the charge conference people, making a vote after they've heard the voice. I know where they stand on it, but I'd like to hear, you guys tell them how you feel as well. Last thing I want to do is see a church split. And so take a mic. Sorry. They're not going to hear you, Glenn. And I have people online too. Sorry. Sorry, I just have people online with us tonight too, and if you say they won't hear you.
All right, all you youngsters. None of you have been here. I've been here since 1937. And a building is not a church. It's the people is the church. So I could care less about the building.
Wow. I don't know. I thought she's coming up. Come on up, sir. That's okay.
I'm the ghost of Christmas past. About 25 years ago, I was heavily involved in the financial end of the church and ended up being the chair of finance for a few years, and everybody hated me. I was the money-grubbing business guy that tried to make sense of all of the happenings at the church. And we struggled back then, just like now. One of my experiences was trying to relaunch the endowment to prevent what we're dealing with now. Months and months of meetings with finance people, with the members of the endowment committee, ended in a meeting where one of the members torpedoed me in the middle of that, voting the result was the measure to save some money for the future, for today, was voted down. Most of the people that voted against it are no longer alive. The member that I can remember very well that did the harm moved on to another church. So here we are. Now, I'm not telling you this to say I told you so, but I told you so. it troubles me now that the options that we're looking at are the options that do the least damage. But damage will occur. The idea of moving a few steps forward, you think about building a new church, how much energy that consumes, building anything, how much energy and how much conflict in trying to get, we couldn't get this group to go out and agree on what color the sky is. Trying to do a project of that scale would consume so much energy, and it would create so much harm that it would be, this group would be unrecognizable when it's finished. That being said, one more thing one more idea that keeps coming to my mind. When I was in the thick of the finances, dealing with the apportionments, all of the business of the church, I was, all due respect, I was really not happy with the way the conference did their business. And I'm still not. I mean, no disrespect. But you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. And the conference takes care of itself. And the conference is not invested in this church as all of you are, because if a member is unhappy, generally they just move to another Methodist church. We are much more invested and will lose much more if this goes away. Of course, I don't disagree with anything anybody has said. It's very emotional. The church is the people, it's not the building. But we're talking about building another building. Well, why do that? If it doesn't matter, let's just have Zoom church from now on. It's done a pretty good job of it. One of the things that, one of the questions that I don't have the answer to is who owns this property? We're talking about selling it. Who owns it? Does the congregation own it? Does the conference own it? I don't know.
Denomination. The denomination.
The conference. The conference owns this church. Pardon me? Well, yeah, that's looming in the future as well. So if the building belongs to the conference, why isn't the conference taking care of it? It's one question. Don't have to answer it. I'm just thinking out loud. But if the church, if Huntington Court owns the building, we have it for free. We have a multi-million-dollar facility, and we're afraid to spend $300,000 to take care of a multi-million-dollar building. It's 75 years old. Everybody knows that. It's going to need some work. But it deserves it, I think. And I think that would be a better choice. So how do you do that? Let me go back to 25 years ago when I tried to get the endowment pumped up. First off, I think I said, if people had gone along with me, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. It would have, this is what I was looking towards 25 years ago. We had money problems. All of the study of problems that every church has with, we're graying out. I didn't have gray hair when I was trying to do that. I do now, I think. I think that we're change. Sue said something about change. Yes, we need to change. I think we need to to realize that money's not evil. Money is energy. Money is freedom. And it's not a bad thing to save money, collect it, and invest it. If I could buy this building today, this $1.5 million building for $300,000, I'll do it. I'd be thrilled with that. Why is that such a strange concept to this group? I don't get it. But at the same time, 25 years ago, when I tried to get the endowment going, when it failed, people were looking at me like I was trying to steal their money. It was just bizarre, the reaction. And this was the elders, the group that were heavily invested in the church. They were the age that I am now. And they couldn't comprehend the fact that the future was coming and we were going to need to prepare for it. So I think there's another way to do this. I think that the damage done by selling and trying to move on, it's just, I don't think anybody's totally thought that through. The church is the people, but one of my favorite sayings is Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And if this building isn't important to this group, let it go. You're right. If it is important to you, get to work and do something about it. I guess that's enough.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, is anybody surprised that I don't agree with my wife?
No, I do. I do think some things to get you guys to thinking mode that he did raise. I need to make sure you do know. Sorry, Matt, I forgot we got people on camera. Yes, the denomination does own the building. We would be working within the denomination. So that's why I said, if this is what we choose to do, we have to have a charge conference. The charge conference would then vote on it. And but it would be, I would have to get the district's approval before selling a facility. The other thing that Keith raised, which I think is something I didn't touch on, he is right. And it was something we did learn during this time. We can do a lot digitally than we did in the past. And I think one of the quotes I shared with the people when we met earlier was Kerry Newhoff. He does a lot of church visioning. And he said in the past, you know, and I've seen that from working with churches in the Williams Road area, we were one of the few churches offering digital services up to 6 years ago, and they were all in panic mode when COVID hit. Because for most churches, even us, this is what was primary. You know, church in a facility was primary. And the thought was that, you know, anything in the digital world was secondary. Part of the reason, if you read my letter we sent out 2 weeks ago, part of the reason we've been slow about transitioning back is we don't want to lose the people we've gained in the digital world. You know, they're still worshiping with us. They still are. I mean, we have more on a Sunday digitally still than in person. And we don't want to lose it. We don't want to just yank, you know, this has been their church for a year and a half and say, surprise, we're going to put it back to the way it was here for us because it's all about us. And we just want to be sensitive. You know, if we're creating communities of Christ, if we're trying to show the love of Christ, we've got to be sensitive to that. But I also say that, going back to what I said Kerry Newhoff would say, is, you know, in the past, the building was primary and the digital world was an afterthought. And he believed that now, and this is prior to the pandemic, I was saying this even going into, because I believe we're one of those 500-year transitions anyway. Yeah, I question a building, period. Because, but Newhoff would say that, yes, you need a physical place, a physical footprint as you minister to the digital world. But again, it's not an either or, it's a both. So, yeah, I mean, I said it because I just wanted, he raised two good thoughts that these people have heard, but you hadn't heard. Anyway, I'm opening it up for y'all share. Yes, ma'am. If you come up here, you can ask a question because I got people online. I have people at the beach like Roy and them, and I promised I just want people to hear. And not everybody in here hears as well.
Did you say there were 20 people on the vision team?
There were 21.
21. Could we know who those people are?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we don't know who.
How many of you guys were here that are on that? 1, 2. They're all the committee chair people that were invited. You know, whoever chaired a committee was invited.
I'll chair committee.
Yeah, all chair committees.
I just think it's something that we need to know. It's happened a lot of times that the committee has done this
Yeah.
and the committee has decided this, but we don't know who the committee is. And I'm just curious enough to know who makes up the committee. I mean, I just think that's just human nature.
I
If
think
somebody's
that's fair.
making this, we know who our delegates are, or we should know.
Yeah.
So we should know in the church too. Another, I guess this is a question or a point of order. If this comes before a charge conference, and I've had this problem, I guess, as long as I've been a Methodist. If I'm a member of the Methodist Church and our church has a vote on something, I should be able to have a vote. And if you're not a member of the board, you don't get, unless you're a member at large. And I would request that we would make it an open charge conference, because I know I have been in some at other Methodist churches where everybody in the church will have a vote when this comes.
I can talk to Doug. If we get to the point of even having that, I mean, we haven't.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
While I'm thinking about
Yeah.
it.
And even if not, I think everyone should be invited to at least be a voice. That way they'd hopefully.
Because, and another thing, I can vote at the district conference, but I can't vote in my own church. That's a little sore point for me.
Yeah. But I would say to Mary Alice's concern, even if not, everyone is always invited to a charge conference. And I think that they should be willing to give a voice. And I would hope that people would vote accordingly. I would hope. So. Again, this is just an informational meeting, guys. Nothing's happened. Nothing's been done. But I really would like you, if you've got concerns, I'd rather, not to be funny, because you can call me next week. I'm at Altamon's. And I'm not the guy. Trust me, it's my people. I'm tired. I'm warm. And, but I love you as a church. And I would like to see you as a church down the road. But again, what you guys decide to do, that's up to you. And I mean that, really. It's up to you what you decide. It's like I told people in the 90s, and like Keith said he told you guys 25. It's up to the church what we had decided to do always. But I'd rather, like I said, so we can move forward. I'd rather conversations be held here than in parking lots or phones, because I mean you can come to me, but I'm not the guy that's gonna make this. I don't even get a vote at charge conferences. I don't even get a vote. So I understand how she feels. It's a messed up system at times. So that's why, like, even when the 6 of them met, I want discussions. I want discussions, and so I'm asking now for discussions. If you have concerns or questions, please ask. Or I'll start singing the sound of silence. And I'm going to ask you if you do, and if you don't hate me, Marjorie, I'm going to make you come up here to the mic. Because again, they can't all hear with the air conditioner on. There's no right or wrong tonight. Like I said, everybody can talk.
You say what you want. Anyway.
Say what you want, there's a mic.
But the thing about it is, the way I look at it is this. I haven't been here that long. But I've loved this church from the time I walked through that door. I don't even remember why I came here, but I did. And someone said, sit down, and next thing I know, the choir's singing, and I'm saying, this is it, I've got it, this is where I'm coming. I've got no other family here. This is my church, my family. I don't have any other family here. They're in England, and all I've got left now is one sister. So we got nieces and nephews, but they're not immediate family. I lost my son last year, and I never dreamed about that. But I do know this. I would love to stay in the church, but it all depends. This is what you're all trying to say, I know, and I feel the same way. But we can't let good things keep coming after bad things, because you're going to lose. But I'm willing to go ahead and try to find a way to maybe still stay here some way and pay it forward somehow, even if we have to give 50 cents a month, you know what I mean? Or borrow, go to the bank, I want to borrow this, I want it for my church, this is how I want it. And we'll pay it off. We'll hopefully pay it off, say within 10 years or 5 years or what. But it will be paid off, but we want to stay here. So it's up to y'all. And I love every one of you. I don't know every one of you personally, but I do, because I've never been happier than I have in this church. The people are wonderful. And it's like I come home every weekend to see everybody. And I've missed that because I can't because of my eyes. Just like sitting here tonight with that sun coming through, it started to bother me. But the thing about it is, whatever you all decide, I hope you all decide together, because that's how we're going to make it, is together, not apart. And I just feel like maybe some way we can, like I said, I was sitting there, and I know it sounds crazy when I tell you this. I said, well, let's all go down to Rosie's and put in a couple of bucks and see if we can make enough. See if we make enough to at least put the down payment. So, let's face it, if we made $500, $1,000 a month, well, heck, here it is. But I'd do anything to stay in the church. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you.
So you never know, it could work out.
Thank you.
I mean, things have happened that way before, so, but I was sitting there thinking that, and I thought, now, should I say that in this church? But I did, and I'm going to. So, and the good Lord knows I call on him every day since I've been by myself. You don't know how many times. And I know, I tell him, I say, I know what you're going to say. You can hear someone, he'll tell someone else, now leave her there a while, because I can't take much more of that. And so anyway, I'm willing to stay, dear Lord, but I want to help out. So, what can I say? And thanks for giving me my peace. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else, guys? Anybody else want to share? Seriously, I'd rather you share here, guys, because otherwise, if they need to think again, or if we need to make a change again, I'd rather you share here. Seriously. I'd rather, like I said, where I agree with Marjorie on the last part was, when we went through all the six ones, just from experience, and talking to others in churches, what are the things when you raise money, how many people do you lose? When you move, how many people do you lose? Yeah, it is a negative way of thinking about that, but sadly, there's also upside for each as well. But I'm a realist. I try to think the pros and cons of each. But I'm not perfect. And so that's why I would rather, like I said, if you've got concerns, please, please, please. Like I said, Marjorie, I'd rather us move, whatever we do, move forward in love. There's been enough bitterness. I'd rather us move forward in love, whatever that decision is. So if you've got decisions or concerns, please share tonight. That's what these are informational meetings for. Share tonight. You can also tell your friends there's one Thursday or Saturday at 10 too. Or you can come back for a second time. Maybe it'll be different. Seriously, anything else? I'll do like my other meetings. Any of you guys on this side got anything got to say? Anybody on this side got anything got to say? How about the back? Y'all good?
There are no questions online either. But we do have 11 people watching.
Okay.
So
You want to steal that mic?
The group decides to explore staying, I do want to say that I'm not just a contrarian. I do have a plan. I don't think this group wants to hear it. That's why I didn't say it earlier. But if the group, seriously, if there is consensus, I'll be happy to share some ideas.
Okay. And I'll let you share it with the six.
Pardon me?
I'd let you share it with the six of them then, unless you want to, unless all of them want to stay.
No, it looks like I'm about to be voted off the island.
I would never vote you off the island.
Drift off to the back. See you Christmas.
Oh, boo, I would never vote you off an island. This should be a safe place for Keith, just seriously. Huh? Now, the one question that she asked, I'm not going to make it up. Is there a time frame? No, there's no time frame on this, guys. If you list the building, if that's what the time frame you're asking on, or you ask like when would we have charge? Charge would be if you do this route. If you do this route, then the next step would be a charge conference. A charge conference. That would really depend on the DS schedule. Then you'd have to work through getting it. I'm assuming that's what you're asking. If they did that. If they did that thing, then it would be a list. And then it's really however long, if it ever sold. If you're still sitting here a year and a half, I'd probably say, guys, if that is the route that you end up choosing, like he said, that's what it sounds like. If that's the route that is chosen, and it's still sitting here, let's say 6 other churches come on the market, there's a chance, guys, it may not sell. That's why if you decide we want to do it quickly, because there's going to be other churches doing the same thing in the near future. But if you did, to answer that question, let's say it's 8 to 14 months is what they would guesstimate on selling it. You would not have the same, the thought was for the 6, because you haven't asked that question yet, and we haven't talked about it. The thought, of course, would be a smaller footprint. The smaller footprint, enough room for the classes, a multi-space, which would be able to use for worship or fellowship. So you're talking about a 4,000 square foot building versus this. This is about just, 3,000 in just the sanctuary, right, Bill? From the front to the back door, 5,000. Yeah. So you would look at a sanctuary that would seat about 200 people, not 300 plus. But I do think, and I would ask for my 6 that have been thinking with me, because they're the leaders that got to go back to all their committees, to go back and pray about what he said. And seriously, pray about what he said, and we'll go from there. I don't know if I answered your question there. Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? No? Glenn's up.
Well, the split that's coming up, a bit more direct to you, will depend upon who's going to own the property. And so maybe in a year from now, we would own the real estate, as we don't now. But that could play an interesting part in the decisions also.
Yeah, and we'd even talked about, just to bore you, Glenn, we'd even talked about the option of the leaving part. And if you were at conference, I don't know if you watched any conference, because there were churches that have left. And of course, they have to buy back the real estate. as well as pay the apportionments if they leave, as well as pay the pre-82 pensions. So,
Isn't a lot of that still kind of up in the air?
no, that's a given. That one they're all agreeing on right now. So basically, if you're talking about like the split between the WCA and the United Methodist Church, yeah, we would then align ourselves with, per se, the way it's supposed to work, which didn't happen last year. Each conference would vote. First we would vote on the split, and I purposely did not put that one in here today, but we would vote on the split. Then the conference would align themselves with each one, and then the churches would align themselves within the conference. The conference, say for example, if this conference was the United Methodist Conference, and this was a WCA church, well then we'd have to vote out. If we were a WCA church and we want to be a United Methodist Church, we'd have to vote out. So yeah, it's a long process still. And the General Conference is not scheduled to meet till August of next year. Assuming we meet next year.
I guess at the next meeting, though, next year we'll decide.
If there's a split.
Yeah, what's really going to take place.
Right. Which was supposed to have been last year, but COVID killed it. And then it was supposed to be this year, and COVID killed it. And we had talked, and Glenn, we talked about that, is this the right time, the wrong time? And then we still think, well, do we make the decisions now based on that? And I think what we decided, and I mean, that's not the 21, that would be the 6 committee chairs. I just need a sounding board because I can't make that decision. And I think what we decided, we needed to, they've been talking about splitting since 1972. And the question is, do we wait on, now this is the closest they've ever gotten to it. But whether it happened, we just said we need to decide what was best for Huntington Court, not either denomination. So, but yes, it's next year's when it would split, if it splits.
I think
Some folks may have the wrong idea. We, in this committee, we covered all of these items. We covered the funds that Keith's talking about. We covered, but what we also covered is the expense of keeping a church that was built for 1,500 people with 200 people. And it's just not feasible. I mean, it don't add up. And we also addressed the manpower thing. I haven't heard anybody say anything about the manpower. Ask Gary, he can call a work session, he gets 3 or 4 people, and those 3 or 4 people includes him and the preacher. So it's more to it than just money. It's the fact that we got a 1,500 person church trying to serve it with 200 people, and it's just not happening.
Anything else? Now I get to sing the sound of silence? No, it's going on 8 o'clock, guys. So I would say if you think about it, you got other questions, let's still be back on Sunday, 10 a.m., same bat time, same bat channel. But I do appreciate your time, and I will pick on myself because, they talked about where they stood. That's not where I stood even when I started the journey. Because Nancy and I had a breakout session. I said, yep. And they all assumed that I was leaning one way, and I really wasn't. So I think I surprised people there because I really wanted it to be their decision, not my decision. And but I say that I do know that they did pray over. They did look at those 6 options a lot, and we talked about the pros and cons of each. We also realized that no matter what decision we'd make, people won't always be happy. We also realized that if we choose the option that they presented, that there will be a grieving process. And I think we'd have to acknowledge that as a church, as well as a time of celebrating as a church as well. So we would need to make sure we did both. We need to walk by the sides of those that grieve, as well as celebrate as we move. It's sort of like a metaphor for life. We go from death to life. But yeah, Bill, you're right. We still have a big facility at the end of the day. if we choose that route. And that's the question, is if we do go back and revisit those routes, do you guys have the energy to maintain this big facility? And without us outsourcing funds to get someone to do it, because it is hard. I mean, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, because there's 4 of us, for the most part, that can come do it, that are sitting here today, that can come do the outside work. And this 4 isn't going to always be here. So then there's 3 of us. You got Rick, Paul, and Robbie, and Gary. And so I say that because we are aging. And whatever, it's just truth. It's not good, bad, or anything. It's just what it is. So I'm going to pray us out. I'll invite you back if you want to come share again, think over it, sleep over it. And I would encourage you to pray. I mean, that's what I made them do. I made them stop several times. Stop, reflect, pray. I said, we're not moving forward till you pray. We're at a place you got to pray. So I say, go home, pray. If you want to come back Sunday, Saturday? Yeah, hopefully come back Sunday. Saturday, but I'm saying hopefully they'll come back Sunday too. But come back Saturday. You may think more questions. So I'm going to pray us out. Gracious God, I just ask that you help us to remember who we're called to be, which is your living presence. The church is to be the living presence of Christ through the things that we say, through the things that we do. As we've been reminded during a pandemic, we're not limited to 4 walls. As we remind ourselves, though, also that we're in the midst of hard decisions, there are so many memories here. No matter what we do, whatever decision we make, we know that not everyone's going to agree. And so as Marjorie said, I just ask that at the end of the day, whatever decision that is made, that we just love each other and that we support each other. And as a body, not a fragmented body, but as a body, we move forward and bring you glory in all that we do, so that people can come and see Jesus, see you through us, through the things that we see and through the things that we do. God, I ask that you be with each person here. And through the time that they serve us here at the church, I ask that you bless them. I ask that you bless them as they go out of these walls, whether they see somebody in the workplace or their neighborhood or here in our 4 walls. I just ask that they model love, and that they see us as individuals as well as a body, as one that models you, that they do not see us, but they see you working through us. I ask that you watch over their health. I ask that you be with them tonight and help them to rest and not give them a fitful sleep. And I just ask that you bless them for giving up their precious gift of time, an hour and a half of their time. I ask that you bless them. I ask that you bless the 6 committee chair people for the time they've given at the end of the day. I ask that you bless those that have been in the past that have walked through this. And God, I just ask that you love on them as only you can. We pray this through your Son, Jesus. Amen. Go in peace. Ciao.